Hi folks, Brian Benz here, Cloud Advocate at Microsoft, introducing you to another JDConf 2024 on-demand session. In this session, Dan Haywood is going to show you how to visualize your builds with the Maven Timeline plugin. It's more than visualizing actually. He's got a great demo that shows a large monolithic application that's being built and all the different various stages and how long each stage takes, which is going to help you make some decisions when you're actually working with Maven and Maven builds and tests, etc. Check it out.
Hi, thanks for watching this lightning talk. My name is Dan Haywood. I'm a UK-based software developer, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the Maven Timeline plugin. So let's get to it. So I work on an application, and I think today you might call it a modular monolith. And what you're looking at here is a diagram that's been generated from the top level POM. Each of these boxes, as you might have guessed, are Maven modules. You can sort of see how each depends upon the other. As you might imagine, I didn't actually draw this diagram. There's another plugin, here's a little Easter egg for you, that can be used to generate such a diagram. Just run that from the top level POM and you'll get a nice picture like this. Choose your diagram format as you like. So if you've got an application that's as big as this, then the question that probably might arise is, how am I going to speed up the build? Now there's a number of things that you could obviously do. You might want to use Maven Demon if you've not come across this, inspired by the Gradle Demon. I think that's rather nice to use. You should be looking to build in parallel, of course, make the most of your multiple cores on your machine, and build offline. So once you pull down the libraries off the internet, then don't keep trying to pull them down. Of course, you should be using Maven Verify, not Maven Install, and don't bother doing a clean, because once you've compiled the code, you don't want to recompile unless you actually have to. So all those two commands together come in as Maven D-T1C-O verify. T1C is one thread per core. And actually, there's one other thing you can do, which I ended up doing. You could buy yourself a Mac Mini, not too expensive, and ridiculously quick. Anyway, but let's get to the next point. What else could you do? Well, you might want to know which of those modules, or those many modules you saw in the diagram, take the longest to build, and also what phases of those modules are taking the longest to execute. So having some sort of insight into that will be useful, because once you've got that, then you might be thinking, should I perhaps split up some of those modules? Maybe some of them take much longer to process than others. I wonder if that's actually a sort of a code smell, where your sort of lumps of code that make up your application are of different sizes. So that's kind of interesting in its own right, isn't it? But anyway, should I split up some of those modules, perhaps try and make them all about the same size? And then what I also might want to think about is, should I separate out the module's tests from its compile? Now, you probably know this, but just to make it clear, if I've got module B that depends upon module A, then what Maven will do is it will only build module B, start on building module B, once all of the phases of module A have been completed. So what that means is that even though I've compiled the code, I have to wait for module A's tests to be completed as well before moving on to module B. So if we were to take the module A's tests and move them elsewhere, then we could be getting on with module B's compilation alongside running the tests for module A, and so that can save us some time. But then again, it's effort, isn't it, to separate out that module into two separate pieces. So is it really worth it? That's what we can get some insight from. So the Maven Timeline plugin, what it does is it instruments the build, and it effectively captures metrics on the start and end of each of the phases of each of the modules. And it also provides a rather nice user interface to visualize that timeline, as we're going to see. So in fact, let's see it in action. And what I've got as a demo for you is, here is Maven Timeline, having run on that big application I showed you at the beginning. And what you're looking at here is it's like a Gantt chart, isn't it? Is that if you look at, say, here, each of these boxes in this little long rectangle represent the different phases for one of the modules. Actually, let's tell you what we can do is we can also zoom in, and I might just zoom into, say, the beginning, just to look at one in detail. So here's one of the first modules, which is the base prod module, this Stasios base module, and so I think this will be the compile phase, and you'll notice here that I can click a button and I can highlight all of the compile phases of each of the modules. And then I think the next one is a test compile. So we can also highlight that. And then the last one, as you probably can guess, would be a test, right? So we could highlight that as well. So we can start to sort of see where the time is taken. Now, if I zoom out a bit further, then we can see that actually the amount of time taken for doing the compile of the code and also the test and even running the unit tests is not that long really comparatively. So where's the rest of the time being taken? Well, it's this one here, the integration test, as you can see. So they're the things that take the time to run. So there you go. Oh, I think I forgot to point out along the bottom you can see as well the amount of minutes that's taken. So this application overall takes about 10 minutes to run on my little Mac Mini there. Another example. So Astachio actually runs on a framework called Apache Causeway, and so I actually work on the Apache Causeway project as well, and so I've actually not really got around to optimizing the Causeway build. As you can see here, here's what we get when I run it, and so I'll just point out a couple of things here. For example, you can see that here is a module called the meta model module, and again we can perhaps highlight doing the compile. And then I think this one here is again the test compile, to compile the tests. So actually even here really the test compile, and then I think the next one here is the test. Let's highlight them just for clarity. You can see that this meta model has to be compiled and then the tests also run before we can get going on the whole bunch of other modules that can be built. So I could save, a number of seconds off the overall build time if I were just to sort of take the tests of the meta module and move them into some other module to run alongside. And I guess I could do the same here with this one, which is the applib module and so forth. Now later on down the line you can see it's all pretty dense, so those kind of optimizations probably aren't worth it later on, but it probably would be worthwhile doing it with these initial modules as well. So how do you enable the plugin? It's pretty easy. Just add this block of XML into your top level POM, and that will spit out these files under target timeline. You're going to end up with a set of stuff here. Execution metrics has kind of got the actual instrumented values, and then the rest of the stuff, as you can probably see, is a JavaScript application really, and what I was showing you was just the timeline HTML with a bunch of fabulous JavaScript to give us our user interface. And then of course you need to serve this up just with any kind of static web server, and so I was using one called local web server installed using Node, which is then run this way using this argument here. Now, as I think I said, I didn't actually write the Maven timeline. I kind of just came across it wanting to optimize and speed up my own build of that application there. So I did a bit of digging around. In fact, the most recent Maven Timeline repo is this one from Takari, which in turn was a fork of this other early one from Bus Jaeger, which in turn was from this Gagio, I'm going to say. I think a French person, chap there, if I get the pronunciation right. I think that David and Jason and Dominic here have highlighted, I think they seem to have done the most work. I don't know any of these people, but I do recognize the name of Jason Van Zyl. He's fairly well known as a founder of Apache Maven, and I believe he went on to found Sonatype, a big player in the Java ecosystem to this day. So anyway, thanks to all those people for the time they spent. And actually now it's over to you, because I have a little confession to make, which is in order to show those user interfaces, I had to turn on a few deprecated features for Chrome. The user interface you saw there uses WebSQL, which has been deprecated. So if you're looking for a little weekend, if you're a JavaScript wizard and you're looking for a bit of a weekend project to contribute back to the community, then why not have a go at forking one of those repos and see if you can basically improve the user interface. Or maybe you might want to build your own user interface with some other toolkit. So, that would be a great thing to do. Anyway, so there we are. That was the Maven timeline. Finishing up. Those are the repos for the Maven Timeline. Also that dependency graph Maven plugin, you can also find that as well. My name's Dan Haywood. If you want to get in contact with me, there's the details at the end. And then the application I showed you, Astachio, and the framework it runs on, Causeway. If you're interested in looking into those, then there's the URL for those as well. All right, cheers.
Thanks for watching. Check out this and more at jdconf.com.